Welcome to today's webinar, Easy Webinars, Content and Automation Done For You. I'm your host, Lauren LaFurla, and I'm the PR and Content Marketing Manager for Covisum. I'm joined today by our presenters, Chris Ross, the CEO of 8-Digit Media, and our very own Katie Godbout, VP of Sales and Marketing at Covisum. I'm going to turn it over to Katie to get started.
So how to host and maximize your success with webinars. There's kind of 5 main categories here that you'll need to look at. Topic, obviously, date and time is important, which platform that you use, how you promote, and then how you follow up. So this is kind of the recipe for success on webinars. One of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit was the topic. And so what we really are promoting from the Covisum side is that Social Security has been in the news a lot right now. It's still a relevant way for retirees to, maximize their income in retirement. Taxes in retirement is big too. So in 2018, there was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It's an election year. Taxes are on the table. It's a important measure for people who are in retirement and nearing retirement. So we want to be able to talk about that. One of the things that's been very important is also like Roth conversions. People want to be able to convert more of the funds into the firm, and then also maximize the tax impact based on that. So having topics that are relevant to your target audience are very, very helpful. Date and time is also important. So we found that doing webinars, and the philosophy is always kind of changing a little bit here, but doing webinars, during the weekdays are better than on the weekends, depending on your content, but this is pretty professional content, so you're not going to necessarily be like a Saturday. You could be, but you really got to test it and try and see what works best for your audience. But if you're looking for somebody just to tell you the date and time, I'd start with Thursdays at 11 local time and kind of go from there. And let's see, yeah, I'll switch it over then to Chris to talk about platform promotion and follow-up.
Yeah, and I'll kind of touch a little bit on the date and time stuff too, just simply because we run a ton of these webinars. And in addition to the 11 a.m. time, during the day, another time slot that's very popular with a lot of advisors, they get quite a few people to show up. It's the 6 and 6:30 p.m. time as well, just mainly because a lot of people have gone back to work right now. So some people are in the office, or even if you're still at home, you may still be required to be online in some kind of capacity. And then if you're doing it at 6 or 6:30, you're generally going to find people who have kind of, shut down from a business perspective at that point in time. And then you can definitely get a few more people to show up. The slides went away on my end. I'm not sure if it did the same on your end or not.
Let's see.
There we go. Yep, cool. There we go. All right. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about platforms. So especially ironic considering some of the issues that we've encountered this morning, and we're actually using GoToWebinar. So this is definitely one of the platforms that people are probably the most familiar with. Because it's been around for a long time. It's more of an enterprise solution than anything else. Obviously, there's also Zoom, which a lot of people obviously know about Zoom right now due to the pandemic. Everybody, well, I won't say everybody, a lot of people are familiar with it and likely have been using it. And all of these platforms have their pros and cons and different advantages. But the one that I want to speak a little bit about today is one that you may have not heard of, which is Demio. And this is the preferred platform that we get a lot of our advisors to use and get set up on, mainly because it kind of overcomes some of the challenges of some of these enterprise solutions. So a couple of things that you can do with Demio that you cannot do with GoToWebinar or Zoom or some of the other platforms out there is the fact that it is completely web-based, which means there are no apps to download. Because the one thing that you don't want to do is get a bunch of people signed up for your webinar. They go to click the link and then they're now prompted to download some type of app. And then generally the thing that most people have a question with is, well, what is this? Is it safe? How do I operate it once I get it on my phone? Or simply, I don't want to add another app to my phone. I'm like that sometimes, where I just don't want to put another app on my device. So if you have a complete web-based application, then they click a link and it opens up just like a YouTube video, which makes it super easy for your attendees to get on your webinar, because you want to make it easy for them to hear your content. You don't want to put roadblocks in front of them. And then one of the other major reasons why you may want to consider a web-based application is also from the marketing standpoint, right? So if you're going to host a webinar, you get all these people here, you want to make it easy for them to schedule a phone call with you. And the easiest way to do that is use the various call to actions within some of the webinar platforms. And GoToWebinar and Zoom don't have this functionality. So basically with Demio, you can click a button and you can have a pop-up appear on the screen, and the attendee can click that button and you can send them directly to your calendar. So whether you're using Calendly, Acuity, whatever the case may be, they can go directly right there and book a phone call with you, which makes less work for you with regard to the follow-up process. So those are probably the two main reasons why you will want to, kind of research and find a web-based webinar app that is a bit more marketing focused, just simply because your job as the advisor, obviously, other than putting on a great presentation and giving them great information, is to make it easy for them to say yes. So we can go to the next slide here. So next up, we're going to talk about landing pages, right? So another thing with a lot of the webinar apps is a lot of them will provide you with kind of like your standard landing page that you send people to. And this is probably the #1 mistake that I see a lot of advisors make whenever we kind of take over their marketing, or we're kind of doing an audit and seeing what it is that they're doing and why what it is that they were doing was probably not working as well as they would like for it to be. Is the fact that a lot of times you end up using these standard landing pages that the webinar provider gives you, and they just don't convert very well, to be quite honestly with you. The words on the page definitely matter, but what also matters is where those words are on the page, because most people, when they click on an ad or click on something from social media, when they get there, you need to make it very apparent what it is that they're going to get when they get on that page, because what most people will do is get there, and if they look confused, or if they are confused, they're going to click the back button. They're just not going to register for your event. So it's very important to convey the information in a manner that's going to make it clear for the person who's clicking on your ad or your post, that when they get there, that, hey, here's what I'm going to give you. Here's the date and time. Here's some highlights of what we're going to talk about. And again, just make it super easy for them to click that button and actually register. And then the last thing here before we roll on to the next section is we're going to talk about promotion. So I know a lot of people mentioned that, hey, a part of the problems that you may be having right now is getting enough people on your webinar, or getting the right people to show up on your webinar. And promotion is obviously going to play a big part in this. If you have a current email list, then you always want to, leverage that list and send your webinar invites out to those individuals. But for a lot of advisors, that list consists of a lot of clients and maybe not a lot of prospects, which means you're getting clients on your webinars over and over again, which is, not a bad thing, but they're already clients. Like, we're looking for some new people, right? We need to get some new people in the pipeline. And one of the ways, or one of the best ways you can do that is, obviously using social media. And again, the imagery, the words, and everything that you use will have a profound impact on the ability to fill up your webinar. Just something simple as the title of your webinar will have a big difference in how many people are actually going to sign up. We've done tests where we just simply changed the title, and everything else within the ad was the same. The only thing that we did was change the title to something that was a little bit more enticing, and it was a night and day difference between the number of people who registered on one ad versus the other. And it's the same thing as far as your imagery is concerned as well. If I had to give one tip, I would probably say the one thing you don't want to do in your ads is to make it look like an ad. A lot of times I see the images that some advisors use, and literally everything that's plastered on the image is, this is a webinar, is the date and the time. There's like a few talking points all within the image, because they're thinking, well, if they see the image, they're going to read it. No, they're going to see the image and say, you know, this is something that I don't want to look at, and they're going to scroll right on past it. So having the ability to write effective copy, use interesting creatives, things that kind of blend in but stand out at the same time, will go a long way in your promotion of your webinar. All right, and then now we're going to talk a little bit about the follow-up. So probably the number one question that I get from advisors is, you know, what do I do with the people who register to my webinar, but you know, they don't attend, right? Or the people who do attend and they don't book a meeting for you. And I can tell you, the fortune definitely is in the follow-up. We have quite a few advisors that have been able to hone their follow-up process in order to, you know, get more appointments booked. One obviously being just, again, making it easy for people to book appointments by using an online calendar such as Calendly or Acuity or whatever the case may be. Not that there's anything wrong with picking up the phone and calling everybody that register, because there is going to be a place where you will want to do that. But ultimately, you want people to have the initiative or take that initiative while they're on the webinar, while they're hot and ready to book that phone call themselves. And that's going to be the, you know, the number one way that you can follow up with people, just simply because they're going to take the initiative to book the call. Another thing that a lot of our advisors are doing is, again, is actually calling people. So I have one advisor who actually calls everyone who registered to the webinar but did not attend. And basically what he does is, if they answer the phone, he'll give them just a little summary of what it is that he talked about on the webinar and ask them if they have any questions. And if they do, then this allows him to extend the conversation and or get them scheduled on an actual call where he can have a bit more of an in-depth conversation with them. And this generally yields him an additional, you know, probably 2 to 3 appointments per webinar just by calling people and giving them a summary. The fourth thing here that we want to do is, obviously we want to put people into some type of email nurture sequence, because again, not everyone is going to show up to your webinar. So the people who don't attend, you want to put them into some type of sequence where, again, you can give them a summary of what it is that you talked about. You can send out a replay for people to watch. But beyond that initial email that goes out, you probably want to follow up with people at least 3 or 4 times to see if they're going to take the next step. And then last but not least, text messaging is very important in this day and age. As you all may be aware, a lot of us don't check our email as much, especially if you're not running the business. I check mine all the time, but my personal email, not so much. But if somebody sends me a text message, I'm going to respond. Now, I know there can be some compliance issues around texting and things of that nature, but if you have the ability to text, I highly encourage you to add texting somewhere within your follow-up process, because a simple text that just says, "Hey, I saw you register for the webinar, but you didn't attend. You know, do you have any questions? Or would you like to attend the next one? Or would you like to speak to an advisor?" And people will respond to those messages and say, you know, yes, no, whatever the case may be, because it's just a quick response and they're going to see it. So definitely leverage text messaging if you have the ability to do so.
Cool. We got a little reminder here. We haven't seen any new questions come in since our question via poll or poll via question. But do just drop them in there, and then when we'll have a little break at each section, and Lauren will kind of audit those questions, read them off to Chris and I, and we will respond to a couple each section if you have them. And if not, we'll get as many as possible at the end of the meeting. I did want to reiterate really quickly, I liked how Chris outlined the things that are important for follow-up. And just to sum that up in a really easy way is, it's got to be easy for the people that you want to reach. You know, if they've got to go through extra steps just to get a meeting with you, like none of us have time for anything extra right now. We are all at capacity, just mentally exhausted from being in a pandemic for so long and having things not work the way that they always have and adjusting to all the things that are new. So if you can make it just a click from exactly where they're at, whether it's on their phone and they're getting the text, or whether it's during the webinar and they just click the call to action at the end, or if it's on demand for everybody who can't attend live, making things easy for your clients and your prospects is really what it's all about.
We did get a few questions roll in here, Katie.
Okay.
So I think pause and answer those. Is Demio a paid platform, Chris?
Yes, it is a paid platform. They have 3 different plans. The plan that you'll likely need is their middle plan. I can't remember the name of it, but it's $99 a month. It's on a month-to-month basis. And that particular plan will allow you to run live and automated webinars. And at some point, you will want to run some automated webinars. Now, there are some pros and cons, and people have different philosophies behind why you may want to do one or the other. There's definitely a strategy behind doing it. But once you run a couple of live webinars and you're able to convert people on the webinar, there really isn't a need to do that live webinar again, unless you just like talking to people live all the time. But some advisors, they don't want to spend that hour or whatever doing the webinar. So you can take that live recording, completely automated, along with all the call to actions and polls and everything. It will look just like a live webinar. And now you could just sit back and wait for the phone calls to show up on your calendar. So you definitely would want to have the ability to do both.
Great, that's a great answer. Recommended length of time of webinar, also Finra reviewed content. I know you're going to get to the Finra reviewed content shortly, but recommended length of time for a webinar?
Yeah, so this is another popular question that I get all the time, because I think everyone is looking for the sweet spot of, like, should it be 38 minutes and 30 seconds because, you know, this is going to get the most number of appointments booked. I can tell you there really is no optimal time. It really depends upon the topic that you're doing, you as the presenter, and your ability to hold the audience. Because I have some advisors where their webinars, you know, are about 35 minutes, and it performs very well for them. And the guy gets quite a few phone calls booked. I have another advisor, his webinar actually goes a little bit over an hour, and he gets the most phone calls booked out of everybody that we work with. Now, the guy's just a really good, awesome presenter. His presentations are really good, and people stay on the whole hour while he's sitting there talking. So don't think that you need to shorten your presentation down to a certain time in order for it to be effective. The best thing that you can do is just deliver the content in a effective manner, and then just, you know, if you can hold people's attention, they're going to stay. Generally, when somebody is on the webinar for like 5-10 minutes, if they stayed that long, they're going to stay to the end, is what we've seen.
Great. We should probably get moving just to make sure we have plenty of time. But I see there's a few more questions rolling in. Don't worry, we're going to keep tackling them along the way and answer a few more at the end.
And then anything that we don't get to during the call, we'll answer afterwards as well. So one of the questions was about Finra reviewed webinars. And so that's where Covisum comes in. We're technically a fintech company, so we build software for financial advisors. We are founded by a financial advisor who practices still, and so understanding Finra review, compliance, and things like that is very important. There are companies, 8-Digit Media and others, that do marketing for you. That's not a thing that Covisum's done for you. We do provide some resources because we know it's important to grow. But one thing that we have always done, it's been a foundation of our business, is to create these client-facing webinar presentations. You can do them in person too. I was talking to somebody earlier today. In person isn't happening as much right now, but they make great webinars that has been Finra reviewed. So we've got 2 that have a Finra review letter that you can use if you want. One is taxes and retirement, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, and the other one is Social Security and retirement income. And these, you can gain access to these with a subscription. It comes free with a subscription to our software. And we've always had something like this that comes free with the software. we have created a kit that's more robust that includes the pre and post email marketing and some tips and talking points, some graphics and such that now also come with that. But if you are not in need of software, you can get these without it. One of the things that I always have to mention, not a lawyer, not your compliance person, so you still need to make sure that your compliance approves all of this, but these two presentations have been Finra reviewed. Couple of tips, just if you're making your own presentation or if you're doing something from somewhere else, you want to avoid marketing content that is advisory in nature. You want to say that like, oh, hey, here's what you should do in your marketing content. You could say, obviously you guys know this stuff, but you know, this could be beneficial. Let's see, come and meet with me or set up a meeting with me and we will find out. You don't want to give specific advice on investments in your marketing. Again, the things you want to say should, don't solicit or overly extend investment advice. You know, like, oh, you'll make $1 billion. It's terrible. Include your disclosure, and then just always make sure that your compliance team reviews things. That's important. I don't want to act like a lawyer or anything, but just, you know, CYA that stuff. Here's a little preview of our taxes and retirement presentation. It's set up to be about 35 to 45 minutes of talking, depending on how, what kind of presenter you are. It comes with the notes so that you know what to say on each of these slides. It also, this year, we transitioned all of our PowerPoint presentations that are consumer facing to on-demand webinar series. And so we've recorded and provided videos that are like the taxes and retirement one, I believe, is 3 videos that are all 10 minutes or less that introduce the different topics. And so you can either watch somebody else present these. Joe, our founder, he's at the CFP that works with us. He presents these. And so you could always just, you know, learn from him, see him do it. Or you could post those on demand and capture leads that way and just use a professionally created, already done for you webinar on demand. And then this next one is our Social Security and retirement income slides. So these we've been doing for a long time. Both resonate really well with that retiree, pre-retiree. They're professionally done. They're ready for you. They've been reviewed. You get the letter. You can do Q&A afterwards. We've got all the talking points and stuff like that kind of done for you. And so that's where Chris and I ended up kind of having a marriage here where like they do all the marketing pre and post, but don't have the content. And we're like, well, we've got the content, but don't do the marketing pre and post. And I was like, I've heard from a million advisors, exaggerating, lots and lots of advisors that they would really like to have somebody that just kind of does it all for them and makes them look good. And this seemed like a good thing to offer to you guys. So that's what we're doing. Yeah, here are again some questions.
Yeah, a few more questions have rolled in. So Katie, this is a good question for you. What email nurture process do you use? Do you use Silverpop or something else?
Oh, so I personally, I'm on more than one platform. That's my gig. I love HubSpot. I'm a HubSpot fan. They've got a free CRM that you can try. They've got another, like a paid version. They've got various levels of marketing automation that you can do through them. I also am currently using Mailchimp. I'm in Mailchimp. Yeah, Mailchimp and HubSpot are ones that I'm in. Mailchimp is a little harder for me, but I haven't been using it for as long. I used it years and years ago. But really, honestly, depends on how big your business is, on how much software or help you need. You can do nurturing just from your Outlook or your Gmail or whatever it is that you're using. It's just knowing that at this time, these people should hear this message, and you want to personalize it and you want to make it actionable and helpful. So even if you don't have a software or platform, you can still do nurturing through text, through regular email.
Great. A question here for you, Chris. Are Thursdays the best evening for webinars? Is there a day of the week that works best?
Yeah, great question. So this is another one that we get all the time. And again, this will depend upon your market also. I can tell you, traditionally, we will run a lot of the evening webinars Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. I try to stay away from Mondays because, people have the Mondays. And then Fridays, people want to go out, even though it's COVID, like nobody probably really wants to sit around and watch a webinar at 6:30 on a Friday. So I would definitely stick to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday if you're going to run an evening time. If you're going to do a Monday, you probably want to do it kind of early on in the morning, I would say. But Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays are going to be your best times, is what we've seen.
Great, and we're going to keep moving just to make sure. I know you have some more questions rolling in. Don't worry, we'll tackle them at the end. And like I said, we will make sure if we don't get to them at the end that we'll send you a follow-up email and make sure we answer those questions for you.
Yeah, so let's jump into how you can get, 40 to 50% of the people who register to your webinar to actually show up. Now, a part of this, first thing here is going to be your topic. So your topic is going to play a huge part in the number of people who register and subsequently the number of people who are going to show up. So what Katie touched on a little while ago about Social Security and taxes and retirement, those are two of the most popular webinars that we're running right now. Social Security, from a sheer numbers aspect, will get you absolutely the most number of people who will register. And the show up rate for that webinar is quite high as well, just simply because it's more of a general appeal type of topic, right? If you're working and you get a W-2, you're paying into Social Security, so a lot of people are always interested in that. Taxes and retirement tends to bring out people who are, maybe a bit more higher quality. Because the people who are concerned about taxes generally are people who have money who don't want to give it all away to Uncle Sam. So if you are discussing or having a webinar on one of those two topics, then those generally perform the best. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other topics, retirement planning, estate planning, etc. And a lot of these will depend upon the market that you're in. Sometimes we've run a Social Security webinar in one state and it performed well, and then we did it somewhere else and it was not the thing that people were the most interested, being the most interested in. So some of this will be dependent upon the clientele that you want to reach, the market that you're in, etc. The other part of this is going to be just having a warm audience. Now, your warm audience is going to give you the biggest attendance rate, right? So obviously, if you're emailing, your current list, or however you build your warm audience, whether those are through COIs or whatever the case may be, those are going to be the people who are going to show up the most. A lot of the webinars that we run them to completely cold traffic. So generally, these are people who have never ever seen their advisor before, but they register for the webinar and they get on there and they attend. But your warm audience is going to provide you the biggest lift in getting that 40 to 50% show up rate. Then the third thing, again, here, I'm going to go back to texting. Texting is a big part of getting people to show up because, again, we're all busy. We're getting pulled in 20 different directions. Relying solely up on email to notify someone that the webinar is starting in 15 minutes is not going to be as great as sending them an actual text message with a link in the text message that they can click on that will open up on their mobile device. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier on when I said you want to make it easy for people to get on your webinar, because when that text message comes out 10 minutes before saying, hey, the webinar is starting, they can literally pull out their phone, click the link, open up the window, and begin to watch your webinar. And roughly about half of the attendees that we see on webinars are actually on mobile devices. So people are not necessarily at home sitting in front of a desktop or a laptop. They're going to be on their mobile device to actually watch what it is that you're doing.
Awesome.
Good point. Makes a lot of sense.
All right. And then also, again, I want to this is going to go back to where we're going to talk a little bit more about topic. But what problem does your ideal client have that they don't want, right? That is the thing that you want to focus on. So if you're really big on taxes and that's kind of like, hey, this is the thing that brings in the most number of clients for us and these clients tend to be well qualified, then again, that is going to be more of the topic and such that you want to do. Now, this is a screenshot that I took from our Google Sheet. We've been tracking the number of webinars that we've done this year since COVID. And so far this year, we've hosted or promoted for advisors 450 webinars and we spent about $350,000 doing that. So we have a lot of data behind, kind of what's happening here. And all of this is cold traffic. So this is not a warm audience from an advisor. This isn't traffic from COIs or whatever. These are strictly Facebook ads to a landing page where somebody goes in and register. And you'll see I highlighted Social Security and taxes and retirement there. And you'll see the average cost of a registrant for Social Security webinars is a little under $8, which is really cheap. Like, this really low number there for a webinar. Now you'll see taxes and retirement is about twice that. But again, the people who show up for taxes and retirement are going to be a bit more high quality person. So you're going to pay a little bit more to get that person there. But that person may be a bit easier to close and may have a much bigger problem to solve than someone who is just looking for information related to Social Security.
I just want to pop in real quick and say, most of the advisors I've talked to, if they can pay 16, 17 bucks per attendee to their event, we'll be pretty happy, pretty satisfied. That's a very acceptable cost per lead. So that's pretty awesome that you've got that figured out, that recipe figured out.
All right, and then let's talk a little bit about a warm audience. So a lot of times, you hear us marketers always say, oh, you need a warm audience, you need a warm audience. But I don't think anyone goes into like, well, how do you build a warm audience, right? So obviously a part of it is going to be email, but you need to get people on an email list to begin with. So this is going to go to some other marketing activities that you will likely be doing even before your webinar happens, right? So if you've been marketing this whole time and you've been building up a list, that's probably the one thing that most advisors will have is, an email list through people downloading lead magnets, white papers, things of that nature. Another thing that we are starting to see some advisors use that is very effective is simply using video. Video gets more play on Facebook and even on LinkedIn than anything else. In fact, LinkedIn rolled out LinkedIn Stories. So all of these social platforms are pushing people to use more video content. And one of the unique things that you can do, for example, on Facebook with video is you can take video and you can build up what's called a retargeting audience or a custom audience. And basically, you want to use this video content to find people who are interested in hearing from you so that when you run a webinar, you can run ads to people who have already watched your video content. So these are people who have already taken the time to at least watch, 30, 40 seconds, a minute, however long of your video content. So now you're just showing them more of your information in hopes to, get them to take whatever that next step is. And then the other part of this about building a warm audience is actually about, using surveys. So this is something that you can actually incorporate into the webinar process, right? So someone registers to your webinar, when you send them to a registration page, after they register, you send them to a confirmation page. On that confirmation page, you can have a box there that says, what is the one thing you want me to talk about on this webinar? And they put that in there. Now this gives you information that not only you can use on the webinar, but you can use this later on in your actual ad copy. Some of the best performing ad copy that we come up with is actually comments from users that say, hey, I had a question about this, or my unique situation is this thing. And if they're experiencing that, then there's other people that are experiencing that as well. So what you can do is you can incorporate this into your email notifications, right? To remind people about the webinar. You can put in here, hey, we've been getting a lot of questions about, does it make sense to, do a Roth conversion right now? This is going to be one of the main things that I'm going to discuss on the webinar. So this is going to give people a reason to show up there.
A great suggestion.
All right, now you guys are going to get tired of me talking about text messages. But I kid you not, this is the thing that helps the most out of everything it is that we do. So 90% of people open their text messages. You'd be very lucky to get, most people have a 10% open rate on their emails. But if you send out 100 text messages, about 90 people are going to open them. So if you can get your message in front of them to say, hey, the webinar is starting, or hey, you booked the call, but you didn't show up. Would you like to reschedule, etc.? use text messaging if compliance will allow you to do so. I can't say it enough.
I want to reiterate that too. Like just in my own life, I get text messages to go to the dentist. You know what I mean? Why wouldn't I get text messages to show up for a meeting with my financial advisor? I think that's smart. I love that idea. And people accept it differently than they did 5 or 10 years ago. It used to be really annoying and invasive to send text messages about business related things. But now it's like super convenient. And, you know, I was, you know, messaging the person shopping for my groceries right before this call. It's like really helpful to be able to have that going on. So again, we've got another little stop, probably just one question here, Lauren.
Yeah. Here's a good question. If we purchase just the PowerPoint, does the price include any future updates?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So yes, the way that we do the PowerPoints, and it's actually a whole kit, so there's more than the PowerPoint that you get other resources, but it's a subscription. So you buy it for a year, and so anything that we add and or change throughout the year is included automatically. And then anything that we add and or change, so long as you remain a subscriber, will continue to be updated automatically. For example, when the Secure Act and the CARES Act came out, we added supplemental slides to the resources, so that way if you wanted to talk about those things, you could. No extra charge, no nothing. It just it'll show up when it's relevant. Cool. All right. So then, how do you follow up and make the most out of registrants who don't attend? So this is something that I've been talking with financial advisors about quite a bit. It's something that we do at Covisum. We've been doing, you know, pretty heavy on the webinars for the last couple of years. We do them regularly. Typically, it's Joe. I've been doing a couple more now that we're really digging into digital communication. That's more my spot. But how do you follow up? So like, we'll have advisors like Chris mentioned who end up marketing to their own database and getting only people who currently already do business with them to attend. And that's great in terms of retention and helping keep that business. But if you're trying to grow, you need to have something else going on. So using his method to get people to your webinar is great. But then most people don't show up during the webinar. 40, 50% or whatever he had there for the numbers. But then you've still got a lot of people who were at least interested long enough to provide you with information. And so it's very important to record your webinar. And like you mentioned, send it out afterwards. You want to send it to the people who weren't able to attend. You also send it to the people who were. A lot of times they want to review a section, or that something went too quick for them, or they want to share it with somebody else. So you need to record it, send it out. You'll send it with a summary of what happened. You can actually transcribe your webinar pretty cheap with some software online, so long as you know, you do that. You'll have to read it again, make sure it's right. But you can transcribe it, post that on your website. Provide on-demand access. So if people will fill out a quick little form, just their email address or first name, last name, email address, and then give them the webinar. Offer to answer questions. And so if people who, like you guys, have put questions in the question box, we'll send an email afterwards saying, here's the answer to your question, or here's more information about what you're asking. And you'll want to do that with a series of emails or text messages or phone calls, and always have that call to action with a deadline. And I think Chris will chime in with a little bit more here, but the important thing is to have a goal. So if you're doing webinars, why are you doing webinars? And then align all of your activity, all of your behaviors, all of the things that you do up with whatever the reason is that you're doing it. So for example, if you're doing webinars to get more clients, then every decision you make should help you achieve that goal. So your calls to action should say to meet with me, or if that's too much too soon, figure out what the step before a meeting is, and then have that be the call to action, followed up with another piece of communication that then sets that precedent for a meeting. And Chris, I think that you had mentioned a couple of things too. I wanted to offer up some time here on making sure that that call to action has some urgency.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely want to introduce some scarcity into your marketing. Now, you don't want to do fake scarcity, right? You don't want to tell people, you know, I'm only gonna take, you know, new appointments for the next, you know, 24 hours or 7 days or whatever number it is that you want to throw in there, because realistically, if somebody books an appointment with you, you're going to take it, right? So you don't want to you don't want to introduce fake scarcity, but you do want to introduce some real scarcity. And one of the things that one of our advisors use as a part of this with his webinar is that he does this kind of like an income review or income analysis, and he tells people on the webinar that, hey, if you book a call within 30 days of this webinar, I'm going to give you this thing. I'm going to take a look at your information. I'm going to run it through this, and I'm going to give you this report, and this report's going to tell you A, B, C, and D, and all this other stuff like that, right? So in the follow-up sequence that we set up for him, we set up a 4-part email and text message sequence. So it's an email once a week after the webinar, and it includes 2 text messages. And the last email and last text message says, hey, today is the last day for you to take advantage of getting this free report. And that is the day in which he gets more appointments booked, on that last day, when you tell people, hey, this is the last day for you to do something, because we're procrastinators. We're just going to put it off like, oh, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. But if you give people a deadline and say, hey, you have to take advantage of this thing now, then that generally spurs people to actually take action. So if you could put a deadline on something, definitely do that, because otherwise, we'll just procrastinate.
Yes, we will. All right, Chris,
and
you've
then,
got this on some converting.
Yeah, this is me right here a little bit. So obviously you do the webinars, you get people to register, you get people to show up, but now you need to convert them into actual appointments. Now, this is the thing that is in the most control of you as the advisor, right? Generally, at least for us as a marketing agency, our job is to get you in front of the right people and then get those people to show up. But there's really nothing we can do per se that's going to convert somebody into an appointment, right? We want to make sure that there's qualified people there. But you as the advisor, the onus really is on you for the most part. Now, a big part of that, again, is going to be us, or even you if you're doing this yourself, to get the right people there. Because you could be an awesome advisor, have an awesome presentation, but if the wrong people are there, then the wrong people are there and they're just not going to do anything. So the first thing is, let's find the most number of qualified people to get them on the webinar, because that's going to give you your biggest chance at converting the highest number of people. But the second thing here will be your presentation. So using a presentation such as the ones that Katie has, that have been, well tested through Covisum, those presentations should convert really well for you. So this will take away something that you don't need to think about, right? You don't need to guess and think about what I need to say, how I need to say it, etc. They've kind of already figured that piece out. And I can tell you, I look at quite a few of these presentations, from our clients, because I like to sit in on the webinars myself, just to kind of see what it is that they're doing. And one of the more successful advisors that I have, his presentation is very clear, and what he does is he takes people through the process of sequence of returns. And the way that he does it, it is very compelling when you get to the part where he talks about the negative returns in the first 5 years and etc. And the first time I even saw it, it turned on the light bulb for me. It's like, oh, this makes like totally complete sense. Like, you have to make it simple for people. You don't want to get on here and make it seem like, although you are super smart, but you don't want to use a lot of complex analogies and make things like just way too busy. Like, people understand simple concepts, and his presentation is dead simple and it converts like crazy. So having a good presentation will go a long way. And then the third thing is, again, make it easy for people to say yes. Having those call to actions, making it easy for people to click on the button to go to your calendar to actually book a phone call, will go a long way in converting the most number of people for you.
Love it.
A few more questions here. Any data on the percentage of attendees that stay on for the full 30 minutes, Chris?
I don't have it with me. Now, that is something that we do track through the webinar app. So one of the things that we can do is we can see how many people, is what we call focus, right? So somebody registered a webinar, they're on there. If they're on the webinar tab, like for example in Chrome, and they're watching it, the app is going to tell us that those people are active on that tab and that they're focused. If they just have the webinar open and then they're browsing Facebook or on Amazon shopping at the same time, it's going to say that it's unfocused. I didn't gather that data, but that is something that we can track. And that's also something that we share with advisors to help improve their presentation skills, because there's a nice little neat graph that it will spit out. And you want your graph to go up in the beginning because you're going to have people who are trickling in, and you want it to level off. And then as you get close to the end, it's going to go down a little bit. What you don't want is for people to come in and then you start having these dips in your presentation. That means that at some point you're losing people. Something that you're saying is scaring people off, or maybe things are too confusing for them, and then people are checking out. So you can get a lot of good data on how people are responding to your presentation, and then make adjustments as you go along to improve that process.
Yeah, great. All great suggestions. Are show up rates different for AM versus PM, Chris?
There is. And again, this will be another thing that's dependent upon your market and your ideal clients, right? So for most people, if you run a morning webinar, at 10 or 11 a.m., for the most part, you're going to get a lot of people who are likely already retired and or who have the autonomy, to be able to watch a webinar for an hour in the middle of the day. So for some people, depending on what it is, the show up rate will be a little less. Now, I can tell you one topic that does really well for morning time is estate planning. We work with a couple of different estate planning attorneys, and a lot of them run their webinars at like noon or 11, and they'll get 50 and 60% of the people to show up for an estate planning webinar. And it's generally, a bit more of an older demographic that's attending these. So depending upon your topic, and the types of clients will kind of have an indication, but from our data, we tend to get more people show up for evening time than a daytime.
Makes sense.
Cool. And like Lauren's mentioned several times, we'll do questions. I don't have anything right after this, so I can stay on until we answer most of them, and I'm sure Chris can too. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about, I know we've kind of mentioned it, sprinkled in and throughout, but kind of just talk about what your business offers?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is we offer basically a turnkey webinar funnel for you that's designed to, generate qualified registrants, which subsequently you can turn into qualified consultations. In our service, where we literally do everything for you, minus get on the webinar and present, right? That's your job as the advisor. But we're going to take care of everything else. So basically, in a nutshell, how it works is you come to us and you say, hey, I want to do a webinar on Social Security. And we're going to say, okay, we have a campaign that we've run 100 times already that has produced these results. And we're going to set that up for you. We're going to write all of your ad copy. We're going to write all the copy for the landing pages. We're going to set up all the automations. We're going to set up your webinar slides in the webinar app, literally everything, including the follow-up sequences, all that stuff. And all you have to do is just show up the date and time of the webinar that you want to schedule it for, and that's it. So it's probably the most low effort as it relates to all the technical stuff that goes into getting the right number of people registered and all that stuff. So we take care of all that for you. And it's a, again, completely turnkey process for you. And we do collaborate with you on things. So even if you want to make changes to some of the stuff that we've already done, we take your feedback. Ultimately, we're going to tailor what it is that we're doing to your practice. And that's how we do it.
That's it's kind of interesting how I met Chris. Like, I was just searching around. I'm like, gosh, people keep asking me to do this stuff for them, and that's not what we do. I mean, I would do it, but like, we don't do that. We're a fintech company. And so when I found out that they're like, oh yeah, we do everything except for the content, I was like, oh, we just do the content. And so what it is that Covisum provides is do-it-yourself webinar marketing kits. And so these really are, templates for emails, talking points, the PowerPoint with the script, some produced videos, some produced graphics that you can share on social. So we do provide those. And Chris and I talked, he can take and just input the follow-up messages that we've created for our PowerPoint presentations right into his funnels. And so it really it's very possible to have a pretty good marriage here, and I wanted to make sure we shared that with you guys today. So what kind of kits do we have? We've got a Social Security and Retirement Income Kit. That one's been FINRA reviewed. We have a Taxes and Retirement Kit, and that one's been FINRA reviewed. We also have a Risk and Retirement seminar. That one has not been FINRA reviewed. We will get it FINRA reviewed at some point, but it has not been yet. We also are about to launch a retirement income distribution kit. This one's more robust. It comes with like a calendar for the year. It also comes with some strategy in addition to the templates. It's much more robust. That topic is more robust, and we wanted to provide some more things with that to help you grow. And then finally, we're going to launch a Roth Conversions, a consumer-facing Roth Conversions kit soon as well. So our newer presentations, we have not yet had a chance to have those been reviewed. We will. We're happy to if we've got a broker-dealer partner. The other thing, like I mentioned early on, and where a lot of our attendees for today's meeting have come from, is we're first and foremost a software solution for financial advisors and financial institutions. We have 4 software programs that we have built by an advisor for advisors. We've got Social Security timing. A lot of people have heard of that and are on it. It's super helpful. We've got Tax Clarity, we've talked about a few times. Smart Risk, it's a portfolio risk analysis tool, and then Income Insight, which really kind of brings it all together. These tools are fully integrated with each other, so if you put data into one of them, it is available in the other tools if you have them. No big sales pitch on those, but that's what we do. Brings us around to that special offer that Chris was talking about. I'll let you pick this up.
Yeah, and hopefully you guys will like this. So, obviously Katie and Covisum can, provide you guys with the content that you're going to need to kind of rock out your presentations. And one of the things that I wanted to do as a part of this webinar is make a special offer to you because, that's what us marketers do, make special offers. And one of the offers that I want to make for you is that if you decide that you want to give us a try and have us build out your own branded webinar funnels for you, I'm going to buy your webinar kit for you. So this means that you get the webinar kit for free. You're not having to pay anything additional for it. You can continue to use that webinar kit, as Katie said, for a year, even if you don't work with us, right? So because everything that we do is on a month-to-month basis. So even if you don't continue the relationship with us, you will still have access to that webinar kit for the whole 12 months, and there are no obligations from you on our part. So one of the biggest things that I believe in is making advisors' lives easy because compliance already gives you guys enough trouble. So if I can make your life easy, that is one of the things that I want to do. So if you're interested in learning more about our webinars, you can go to the link that's shown here on the page. So it's 8digitmedia.com/market-request. And you can fill that form out, and basically it lets us know where you're located. We only work with one advisor in each market, just simply because that's the best thing to do. And it's very hard to put multiple advisors in one area because now we're just going to compete against ourselves. We're trying to provide good results. So we only work with one advisor in each market. If you fill that form out, that'll give us a little bit of information about you and the market that you want. And if it's available, I'll shoot you an email and say, hey, this market is available. And if you want to come on board and use us to build out your webinars for you, we will purchase this Covisum kit for you, whichever one it is that you want. And we'll set up the webinar for you, completely turnkey, and use that information and help you get some appointments on your calendar.
Making it easy, making it easy.